DIY, the show where you send in items of clothing that you've seen on the internet and then I try my best to recreate them. Lately, I've had a number of you asking me to try and make these fashion sports bras. And I've also been needing some exercise gear lately, but I didn't want to have to buy exercise gear from the shops, so this is a great excuse to learn how to make some for myself. Now, I've actually come up with two methods of doing this. The first one is super easy, and the second one is not as easy, but it does give you a more customizable and potentially more supportive fit. Anyway, in this video here, episode 53, I'm going to be showing you the super easy way, which is good for people who are new to the DIY game. And then I will also do an episode 53 and a half, which will show you the harder but much more customizable way to do this. Before we start, this video is sponsored by Graphic Stock. Graphic Stock is a super useful service if you are a graphic designer, or you run a website or a social media page, or any other situation where you need access to good royalty-free images. You can go here or click the link in the description box below for a 7-day free trial and get started with Graphic Stock today. All right, so let's get started with the first easy way to make one of these fashion sports bras. So I thrifted myself some singlet tops in my size. It's really easy to find singlet tops at the thrift store. There are about 50 of them to choose from at the one I went to. Next, I got myself the elastic that's going to serve as the thick exposed elastic band that goes around my waist. I'm going to use this rainbow elastic for the grey top and a light purple color for the purple top. Then I put each singlet top on and I figured out approximately where I wanted to crop it to. You don't need to add any extra length to this measurement. I drew on a faint line at this point using some chalk, and then I cut it straight across along the line. I'm using a rotary cutter here, but you can also draw a line and then cut it out with some scissors as well. Just make sure to pin the back and front together before you do this so the fabric doesn't shift out of place. Now I'm actually going to use this bottom section that I'm removing here to practice on before I apply the elastic to my crop top. It's a really good idea to use this scrap piece to practice your elastic application, using just a small piece of elastic before trying the technique on your crop top for the first time ever and then potentially ruining everything. The next thing I did was to measure out my elastic waistband. I did this by wrapping it around my waist at the height I wanted it to sit, making sure it wasn't too tight. I pulled it just slightly, and then I added an extra ½ an inch and I cut it like this. Then I folded the elastic into a loop like this and sewed a straight stitch across here. Then I clipped the excess elastic close to the stitches, folded the flaps open like this, and I sewed a zigzag stitch over both these little flaps to keep them flat, using a thread in a matching color to the elastic. To apply the elastic band to my crop singlet, first I needed to place 4 pins evenly spaced around the bottom of the top. So one at each of the side seams, one in the center front and one in the center back, pointing downwards like this. I did the same thing to the elastic, quartering it with pins so that the 4 pins are evenly spaced out. The next step is sewing the elastic to the singlet top. The elastic is going to be applied like this, so I placed the elastic sitting on top of the singlet top's raw bottom edge underneath my sewing foot. Then I stretched the elastic so that the next set of pins met up. Then, holding this in place, I started sewing the elastic to the fabric using a normal zigzag stitch. And as I sewed, I tried to get as close to the edge as possible without the stitches going off the actual edge of the elastic. And I continued sewing the elastic band all the way around the singlet top until I got back to my first stitches. So this creates a nice sporty crop top, but it's kind of plain looking. And I wanted to add some extra details. So we're going to add graphics to both the shirt and to the elastic band as well. Now, seeing as Graphic Stock is sponsoring this video, I'm going to use graphics from their website so that I can show you a little bit of the behind the scenes of my design process. I downloaded this Photoshop image and I turned it into a slogan. This slogan was actually suggested in a previous Make Thrift buy by Mallow A. So thank you for the suggestion. I made it black, then I downloaded this scissor image, also from Graphic Stock, and I added it onto the slogan, and bam! Craft or die! I like this graphic a lot, and I'm going to put it on the front of one of the crop tops. And yes, I did consider craft or DYE because when in doubt, make a pun. But I decided that that was just a little bit too confusing. Now for the elastic, I'm going to make a short, snappy slogan. This time I used the same editable text file and I used it to write out DIY life, like this. I put both of them into a Word file, flipped them horizontally so that they'll print out backwards, and then I copied and pasted the DIY life part out a bunch more times so that it can go all the way around an elastic band. First, I printed this out onto plain paper so I could make sure it was the right size for both the crop top and the elastic pieces. And then I printed it out properly onto my nice, expensive transfer paper. Now, this is very important for the elastic printing. Most transfer papers will not work on elastic, but I kept on hearing really good things about this Leslie Riley's tap. Apparently, it can be used not only on fabric, but paper, wood, glass, metal. So I thought, hey, maybe it can work on stretchy elastic as well. So following the instructions on the transfer paper, I cut out my slogans like this. I didn't bother with cutting out each individual letter because apparently the white background parts will go transparent. And then I spaced them out evenly along a fresh elastic band. As you can see here, this elastic band isn't yet sewn onto any crop tops. It's easiest to apply the images to the elastic before you sew it to the top. So this is going to be going on a third crop top. I'm also using knitted elastic for this. It's about 1 inch wide and it has a flat surface to apply the transfer to. You don't want to use the type of elastic that's ribbed or has big ridges on it because that won't work. So working one by one, I placed the DIY Life image face down onto the elastic and I put my press cloth over the top and then I pressed it on with my iron using a lot of pressure and a near maximum heat setting. Again, I recommend practicing this on your scrap piece of elastic before going all out on your measured elastic piece. After about 20-30 seconds, I removed the iron and the press cloth and I pulled off the backing paper with a pair of tweezers. It should come right off without any resistance if it's all transferred nicely. And there we go. It's transferred onto my elastic and check this out. You can stretch the elastic and it doesn't ruin the image at all. I was so damn excited when I did this because it looks so freaking professional. This is awesome. So I then went ahead and applied that elastic to a black singlet top that I already owned in the exact same way as I did for the purple one. Applying the larger image to the singlet top is much the same as using any other t-shirt transfer, and I've done a more in-depth tutorial on this in the past, but this time I'm just replacing the transfer paper I used there with Leslie Riley's transfer paper. I do think this transfer paper requires a little bit of practice to work with, and I don't recommend doing a complicated or large graphic like this on your first attempt like I did. I think my heat settings were a little bit off and it didn't transfer properly, but I think that was my fault, not the paper's fault. And hey, I'm just gonna say that I did this on purpose and did it to give the shirt a vintage feel. I also added this little rainbow to the gray and rainbow top. The image was also downloaded off graphic stock, and this one did turn out a lot better. Practice makes perfect, guys. So anyway, now I've made 3 sporty crop tops and it's time to find out. How did I go? Wear some leggings with these, but I literally don't own any. I think that's the next thing that I need to learn how to DIY. Also important to note that unless you start with a really tight singlet top, this is not going to be as supportive as an actual sports bra, and we'll go through some techniques to make a more supportive top in the next video. I still had to wear a bra underneath these, but this style of crop top is really trendy right now, just as a fashion piece. So they make really cute crop tops to just wear out and about, particularly underneath overalls. I've seen some people wearing these kind of tops underneath overalls. It's really, really cute. And that's it. These turned out so super cute. I especially love the printing on the elastic band. And I've also thrown this test elastic piece I did here into a couple of loads of washing. The image hasn't faded at all and stayed on really well. So if you're washing this, which I recommend you do with clothing, make sure you're washing on a cold, gentle cycle and it'll stay on fine. So in conclusion, this project is A, thrift some singlets or use ones that you already have, crop them, add elastic, and then if you want, add some graphics as a finishing touch. It's a really easy project that can be done by sewing beginners. It's a good project to learn how to work with stretchy fabrics, and it can easily be completed within a couple of hours. Thanks again to Graphic Stock for sponsoring this video. I've been using Graphic Stock for my Instagram edits and YouTube end cards lately, and I've been finding it a super useful service with over 300,000 images that also come in editable Photoshop or Illustrator files. They also just launched this new collection of futuristic and dream-inspired images, which is included in every subscription, which are just so dang pretty. If you have any graphic design element to your work, or you run your own business, website, YouTube channel, etc., it is such a useful service, and from my own experience, I can highly recommend them. Thank you for supporting the companies that support this channel, and as always, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to check out part 2 of this video, episode 53.5, which will be the harder, more customizable way of making one of these sports bras. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!